I'll be sharing with you how to warp and weave the herringbone twill pattern on the rigid Heddle loom as seen in the pictures. If you'd like a copy of the pattern draft and threading diagram, they are available in my Etsy shop, and the link will be in the description below. To begin, we have our Heddle. This is a 7.5. I'll be showing two ways to warp the loom. The first one is a 7.5 dent Heddle. I'm using a DK weight yarn. And again, if you look at the pattern, we will be following the diagram, starting with a slot. And we're going to warp the slots and then later move the threads into the appropriate holes. For this, we'll have to skip some slots in order to make our pattern the correct width in our reed. So we're going to begin with the first slot. And then we will weave a second slot, skip the next one, thread the next slot, then we will skip a slot and thread the next. Our pattern spans 7 slots and then it repeats. So you'll have 5 of those 7 slots threaded and skip 2. And you'll continue that pattern until you have the desired width warped in your reed. Once you have the heddle warped, you can wind onto the back beam, and then we'll begin moving threads from the slots into the holes. Again, we'll look and follow our threading diagram, and I would like to count along with the threading diagram. So to begin with, our first slot is thread number 4. We'll need to move one into the hole because this is heddle number 3 or shaft 3. And then we'll have 2 and 1. So move one thread into the next slot. So you can see here we've got 4, 3 is in the hole, 2 and 1. And then we'll continue that sequence again. 4, move thread 3 into the hole, 2, and then 1. Move one thread into your empty slot. And then you'll need 4 and 3. So you've got 4, move 1 into the slot, into the hole, and that is your first sequence of threading. You can tie those together loosely. I like to tie them together because I have a tendency to bump my heddle and it falls down to the ground. Having the knot there will prevent your heddle from falling and losing all the work you just did. So now our pattern is going to reverse. So for this section, we'll have to be moving a lot more threads. So we want to count. We want to have 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have 2 threads. We're going to need to move one of them into the next slot. Now we have 3 threads in a slot. So we're going to I find it easy probably just to take all of them out. So we had 1, now we're going to have 2 in a slot, thread number 2, not 2 threads. Then we're going to have 3 goes into the hole and thread number 4 into the next slot. And then we'll do that again. Thread number 1, move thread number 2 to the next slot. You have 3 in this slot. Take those out. You'll want thread number 2 in a slot, thread number 3 in a hole, thread number 4 in a slot. And then you'll need 1, 2. Thread number 1 and thread number 2 in slots. That's your second bundle. Then you can start again with the first bundle, repeating what we did in the first bundle until you have all your warp ends threaded in your heddle. I will show this warping sequence again with a different thread, showing how you would have 2 threads in each of your slots and your holes according to the pattern diagram. Okay, now we have our project on the loom. I'm using a 22 silk yarn in a 15 dent heddle. You can use whatever yarn you choose with the appropriate heddle. For this project, I am having double threaded my slots and holes. Remember, according to the pattern, not all of our holes are threaded. So using the direct warping method, I find it easy to just leave each slot double threaded. So to begin with, following our pattern, you're going to start with thread number 4 in a slot, three is in a hole, 4 in the slot, 3 is in the hole, 2 and 1 are both in slots. And then you'll have that again. 4, 3 in the hole, 2, 1 are in the slots, and then you'll have 4 and 3. And that's your first grouping. Then you'll reverse that pattern again. 1 and 2 are in the slots, 3 is in the hole, 4 is in a slot. And we have that again, 1, 2 in slots, 3 in the hole, 4 is in a slot, and then we have 1 and 2 in slots. And that's our second sequence. Continue that all the way across until you have your heddle number 3 warped. Now you're going to add in heddle number 2. It should also be the same dent as the first heddle. In my case, this is a 15 dent heddle. And all those threads from the heddle number 3 that you warped, just put them over the top of heddle number 2. So you're going to grab the first couple of strands, and again, following your threading diagram for heddle number 2, we're going to count 4, 3, 2, 1, 4, 3, 2, 1 again. So line up your heddles and poke your threading hook through until you are sure that you're using the same slot that thread number 4 is in. Then you can pull thread number 4 through that first slot. There's not a whole lot of space, so you have to be really careful when threading these. So that's thread number 4. 3 is in a hole in that back heddle. It's going to go into the slot in my heddle number 2. So every time you count 3, you should feel resistance on that thread because it's in a hole behind you, behind the heddle. Now we're on thread number 2. That's going to go into the hole on your second heddle. And then thread number 1 in the slot. So I've got 4, 3, 2, 4, 3, 2 is in the hole, and the rest are in the slots. And we're going to do that sequence again. 4 in the slot, 3 in the slot, number 2 goes in the hole, and 1 in the slot. And then we have 4 and 3, both in a slot. And they are all going in different slots. There is a threading diagram showing how you can make it denser in your heddle in the pattern, which you can purchase in the Etsy shop. It's always a good idea to double check your threading sequence after you finish each group of 10 threads. So here you can see we've got our threading sequence correct. We've got 4, 3, 2, 1, 4, 3, 2, 1, 4, 3. And again, I like to tie those in a knot to keep them secure and out of the way. Then you will continue with your threading sequence. The next part will be the 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Continue following your pattern until you have all the warp ends threaded in heddle number 2. All right, now we need to add our third heddle, which will be heddle number 1, the one closest to you. Depending on your loom, you may or may not have a 3 heddle block. My loom has a double heddle block, so to add that third heddle in, I'm going to move my heddles around. I'm going to use some wood clamps, and I'm going to clamp heddle number 3 and heddle number 2 together. Heddle number 2 will rest in that neutral position. Heddle 3 is just going to hang out in the back, but until the loom is tied on, I need to clamp it in place so it doesn't fall. And you will need a clamp on each end. Depending on your loom, you might be able to use rubber bands to hold those 2 heddles together, but I find the clamps work really well. Now you're going to bring in your third heddle of the same dent. Again, mine is a 15. Take all those threads up and over that first heddle. When you're finished tying on, that third heddle is just going to float in the back there. Now we can begin threading heddle number 1. Again, looking at our threading diagram, line it up. Your first thread is thread number 4, which is going to be in a slot on all 3 heddles. So here you can see we're pulling thread number 4 through the slot. Thread number 3, which went from a hole to a slot. It's going to stay in a slot for the front heddle. Thread number 2 is also going to go in a slot. And thread number 1 will go into the hole on this first heddle. So I've got 4, 3, 2, 1. And then I'm going to repeat that. 4 in the slot. 3 goes in the slot. Thread number 2 goes in the slot. Thread number 2 goes in the slot. Thread number 1 goes in the hole. And then you have 4 and 3 both in slots. And that's your first grouping. Again, keeping those threads tied in a bundle helps prevent your heddle from falling and removing all your work. Moving on to the second bundle. Now we're counting 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have number 1 going through that hole. 2, 3, and 4 will all go in the slots. That's number 3 and 4. And then we have 1 going in the hole, 2 in the slot, 3 in the slot, and 4 in the slot. And then we have 1 in the hole and 2 in the slot. And that's your second grouping. And again, continue that process until you have the front heddle completely warped. Now we're going to review our heddle lift sequence. You can see I've already woven a little bit. We're going to begin following our diagram with heddle 1 and heddle 2 in the up position. If you don't add a floating selvage, you will need to make sure that you're catching all the threads on the end. So again, we have heddle 1 and heddle 2 up. Next, we're going to have heddle 2 and heddle 3 up. Again, my third heddle is floating in the back, so I simply lift it and hold it. And I know that that first thread I need to go over instead of under. So you will notice that I'm pushing it down with my shuttle stick. And that is our second pick. And you can just drop that third heddle. Next we will have heddle 1 and heddle 2 down, and we will raise heddle number 3. Again, I'm just going to lift it and hold it. That is by lowering heddle 1 and 2, that's lifting shaft 4 or all the threads in the slots. So that's our third pick. And then for the fourth pick, you want heddle number 1 neutral, heddle 2 down, heddle 3 also down. And because I don't have a floating selvage, I have to go around that thread in my bottom row. So I'm going to bring my shuttle up and around it to wrap it, and then through the shed. And that is your fourth pick. And you will repeat that for the entire length of your project. Now you should note that you do have a very You should note that for this project, when you're weaving, the shed created can be very small, so you need to advance frequently. And I'll try to show from the side what that shed looks like. Hopefully you can see here we've got heddle 1 and heddle 2 are up. It's best to keep your shuttle close to the reed to ensure that you're going through the right shed. Next we have heddle 2 and 3 up. Then we have heddle 1 and 2 down, and we pull heddle number 3 up. And then for our pick number 4, we're going to have heddle 1 neutral, heddle 2, heddle 3 down. And there you see I'm just wrapping around the outside thread to make my selvages nice and neat. We'll show that sequence again, heddle 1 and heddle 2 up. Heddle 2, heddle 3 up. Heddle 1, heddle 2 down, heddle 3 up, and then we have heddle 1 neutral, heddle 2, heddle 3 down. And just kind of push heddle 3 down. And then I'll try to show again from another angle so you can get a good view of this process. Again, we've got heddle 1 and heddle 2 up. And you do get into quite a rhythm when you're doing this after you get the sequence memorized. Heddle 2, heddle 3 up. Sorry, my arm is in the way. Then we have heddle 1 and 2 down, heddle 3 up, heddle 1 neutral, heddle 2 and 3 down. And just continue that sequence until you have finished weaving your warp. I hope you enjoyed this project. A copy of the pattern is available in my Etsy shop. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.